Hi everyone, it's Elo. I hope that you're doing well. Today I just wanted to talk a little bit about some social stuff, I guess. This is sort of a departure from my usual wheelhouse because I don't usually get very personal, but I was talking with someone who is a subscriber and a patron and a friend who was talking to me about just sort of some themes along this vein, and thought that it would be a good idea, so I'm going for it. And today I just wanted to talk about some social and emotional aspects, and I figured a good way to do this would be to sort of talk about my own life as well, so that I can relate and be more specific about anything that I might want to discuss. So if this sounds like the kind of thing you'd be interested in, stay tuned. And if you don't want to know anything about me or talk about these sort of things, then that's fine, and I'll see you in my next video. I appreciate all of you, and I know that not every video is for everyone, and I do my best to spread it across the board, so I hope I do okay with that. And thank you to those of you who are vocal and encouraging. It means a lot to me. So anyway, let's get started. First, I was just gonna talk a little bit about my social experience growing up. I grew up in Connecticut. I was born in Connecticut, and I spent the first 13 years there. I've always been a little foodie, and I also was a tubby little thing, and I had eczema on my face and other areas, my arms and knees and legs, and it's like a little Michelin man with a skin condition. And that never really fully went away, as I was talking to one of my other subscribers about. I still sometimes get patches when I'm really stressed, so just one of those things. I also have Asperger's, as many of you know. I'm autistic, and this led to a lot of photos of me before I understood that I needed to smile for pictures in a certain way. The concept is still a little weird to me, but before I knew to smile with my teeth, my natural smile was very forced and looked like this. That's me in good old Chuck E. Cheese in 1995. That's that smile. So sometime after that, I learned to smile like this, and it's pretty much stayed like that for pictures. It's easy, and I like to smile a lot, but if it's not genuine, I have a hard time making it happen and making it look normal. So, fun fact. And then, so I graduated 5th grade looking about like this. Very normal, plain. And then I continued living with my family in Connecticut until I was 13, I guess, and we moved to the South for job opportunity for my dad. So I didn't really have a choice, and I definitely I immediately missed home, and sometimes I still miss it, but I actually really enjoy where I live right now. So maybe someday I'll move back up to New England. That's where all of my memories are, and everything that I'm used to. and you'd be surprised how much of a difference it makes moving from one region of the country to another. It's very different, and it was a really tough transition for me, especially because I had just sort of found a group of kids who were like me, I guess, in a sense. So I went to school with the same kids pretty much from kindergarten through like 8th grade, or 7th grade. So there were a lot of kids, and it wasn't like a very small school or anything, or town, but still I generally knew everyone's face if I didn't know them personally. And something happened. I don't know if this happened where you live too, or if it's gonna happen, or if it just happened, but for me, in the shift from 5th to 6th grade happened to be a huge shift, and I had been friends with pretty much everyone before that, but then once 6th grade hit, the public school combined all of the elementary schools into 2 middle schools. So there was our middle school and then our rival middle school across town. We didn't really care that much, but whatever, there were 2 middle schools that were public schools. And so in middle school, we ended up having a lot of kids who I had never met before, and cliques started forming, and I had no idea that that was going to happen. I don't know if everyone else knew and I was the only one who didn't, but there was a lot of segregating, and you can't sit with us, and people befriending people for various reasons, which, you know, when you're 12, or 10, 11, 12, how intense can those reasons really be? But these girls were very, very intense. And I had a group of friends at school, and I had a group of friends at home who I was fortunate enough to live in a really great neighborhood. Not that we were really rich or anything, but just the fact that there were a lot of other kids around my age in the neighborhood, and a few of them went to local private schools, so there was no conflict with that school hierarchy. So I was really fortunate to have a friend group in my own neighborhood, and then also friends at school. But once middle school hit, it just got really ugly really fast, and I, in all of my naivete, had no idea that that was coming. So I got skewered pretty hard, and I'm not much of a fighter when it comes to interacting with other people. I don't like to. So I'm not going to intentionally fight with anyone, and if anyone was picking on me or teasing me, I had a really difficult time responding to them, because I just wouldn't understand why someone would want to be mean to me when I hadn't done anything to them. There was no cause, so I didn't understand the effect, and I think that screwed me even more. People just realized that it was really easy to mess with me and make me feel bad, and I think in general, this is a social cycle that is unfortunate, but I don't see it really changing as a society. Maybe someday, but the thing is that you have these family structures at home where these kids are treated in various ways, ranging from neglect to smothering. And then when these kids are all thrust into school together, sometimes that's the only place for some of those kids to feel important. And big and strong and tough if they're being bullied at home, or if, they feel like they're not good enough, or their parents aren't being accepting of them, or whatever it is, then that's going to impact people differently. For me, even though I didn't always really feel like I felt like I fit in my home life, that just made me more empathetic towards others at school who I saw struggling and needing help and some guidance and someone to care about them. So some people turned into these praying monster type kids who would just insult everything about me. Hair, weight, looks in general, eyebrows, nose, coordination, who I wasn't dating, any topic that could be thought of was thought of. Even the fact that I did well in school and put a lot of effort into school and like to read, all things that we don't consider bad when we're adults. When we're adults, we tend to think okay, well, there's someone who's going to do well for themselves because they're putting in the effort and the work, and you don't intentionally go out and try to pick a partner who has nothing going for them. That just doesn't make sense. So my point is that I was really, really, really tortured by a lot of people at that school in 6th and 7th grade. So I transferred to a local, not very expensive, private Catholic school, which was tiny. We had, I think, 25 kids in our graduating class, and the school was one hallway long, literally. You walked in the front door, it was the double doors. There was Sister Anne Marie's office, she was the principal, on one side, and a little nurse's station on the other side. And there was a really short tail kind of hallway straight ahead that had a computer room and I think a children's classroom. But then aside from that, the hallway just went in one direction and the rooms branched off on either side until you hit the end. And there was one class per grade, about 25 kids per grade. And it was one of the most fun years of my life. I was so lucky. One of my friends who went there was one of the girls who lived in my neighborhood, so I at least had one friend to start, and she and I were really close from goofing around all those years at home. So I naturally made friends in that environment, and it was really sheltered, I guess. So there was none of that really heinous torturing and teasing that I had experienced before. There was still some natural separation of the kids, but it wasn't hateful. We knew that we were a unit, and I really enjoyed that. And there were a lot of fun perks. We wore a uniform, which was your typical plaid skirt, button-down shirt, or in the summer it was a khaki skirt and green polo, like a dark green. It was actually kind of nice. And then we had a gym uniform. 8th grade, you wore your gym uniform the whole day. That was the weird part about it. It was indecent to change at school, so you just wore your gym clothes all day long. So that was either your shorts, blue shorts and a gray shirt, or during the winter it was blue sweatpants and a gray sweatshirt, a blue sweatshirt that I still wear all the time. So it was a fun, neat little school. Everyone there was just a little family, and that's definitely the way that I personally prefer things, but I've realized that not everyone is that way. So I guess after the end of that year, it was difficult, but my parents told me I had to go back to public school for freshman year because we couldn't afford for me to go to the private high school. So instead of going with my newfound friend group, I was thrown back in with all of those kids who were mean to me, plus the other middle school. We all converged into this massive, wild high school. It was insane. There were thousands of kids. I can remember seeing girls wearing bathing suits to school and guys in gorilla suits and people throwing things. I mean, it was just like out of a movie, which it was horrific for someone like me who just likes to be in quiet environments and not be around that many people. So I suffered again in that sense, but I also managed to find a really great group of friends, comprised of the girls I had been friends with in middle school, and then I introduced them to a group of guys who I had met who actually went to the other middle school. And that became our little crew, and we were very goth, skater, punk. The girls were kind of more prissy, my female friends, but I was always much more of a tomboy, and I've always gotten along with boys more naturally. I think they're just more on my pace with socializing, and just the energy that they have is usually more low-key. So in general, I've had an easier time making friends with guys, but I would love to have more female friends if I found more people like me, but we're all hiding. So anyway, I found those guys, and they were very different. I had never met anyone before who was dressed in all black, or had Liberty spikes for hair, or skateboarded all the time. I mean, these kids were so cool to me. They were so different. Just really spoke to me, and I've realized only recently why, which sort of ties in with the larger emotional sort of argument that I'm working towards. So these kids were very, very accepting and just seemed cool. They introduced me to Hot Topic and Spencer's and all these things that I was too innocent and unsocialized to know about before that. And they taught me to like Atreyu and All Shall Perish and Whitechapel and all sorts of Opeth. I mean, like crazy, all kinds of bands that I had never heard before, and I have become a huge metal fan ever since. So all of that was just amazing, and I was sort of soaring because I had successfully found a group of kids that I felt like I belonged to in public school. I was like, oh man, this isn't gonna be so bad. And then we moved. Halfway through my freshman year, 4 days after Christmas, we moved to the deep south, and I was really, really heartbroken. And that's when I actually started putting on a lot of weight and becoming unhealthy and all of the things I had worried that I was before. So we moved. This was me on my 16th birthday. And this was when I was at the first school that I went to down here. It was a private high school, which my parents could afford to send me and my brother to now that my dad had this new job that we moved for. And the academic curriculum of that school was clearly superior to the other schools in the area, so I understood why we were being sent there, but I really didn't like it. And that hatred, that grew into a hatred for that school and for a lot of the people who went there, because they were just like the kids I had known in middle school, only they had money and a lifetime of experience with being that way. The school was really exclusive, and they called the kids who had been there since pre-K lifers, and those kids would not let anyone else hang out with them. It was really insane. So you had your lifers, and then you had everyone else, and everyone else was then further segregated into like cool everyone else who the lifers would actually talk to or something, and then like loser everyone else, which obviously was where I was. So as a choir singing, band playing, book reading nerd who now also listened to metal music and wore Ramones t-shirts and like big baggy pants that you'd wear to a rave, I was not exactly a prime candidate for this school where you had to wear only clothes that didn't have labels on them. Like it could have polo or something like that, but you couldn't have writing, is what I'm trying to say. Like you can't have a t-shirt that just says like Pickle Rick or something. Like you can't wear a regular t-shirt to school, which if there's no uniform, that's like torture for me, because I am very much, or I was very much, someone who wore band t-shirts and jeans almost all the time, year round. So I had no idea what to do because I wasn't allowed to wear jeans and I wasn't allowed to wear band t-shirts. And my very first day of this school, I actually got demerits for my outfit. It was the only thing I had that didn't violate their rules, and apparently it still did, because my skirt was allegedly too short, even though it was not. Like I said, I've come from a very conservative family, and I get nervous showing my own body off, so whatever. Got in trouble for my outfit being too loud and too short. So that was fun. Anyway, that was a prison. That school, really, truly, it was awful for me, and I was told to go back where I came from, that I belonged on a funny farm, that I was just not one of them, was the big memo. And I did make a few friends there, don't get me wrong, but I just never really felt like I fit in all the way, even with them. So that was really depressing. And my junior year, I was so depressed that I just said I wasn't going back, and so I transferred to the public school in a different county, which wasn't to get away from people, it was just the best education for a public school nearby, and it was the school that felt most like home to me. So I chose it and I went, and there were still some issues with that I won't get into, but I did manage to make one friend during my junior and senior year, who is still to this day my best female friend who I've ever had. And I made another friend, my friend Matt, who, as you may know, has passed away not long ago, but he was my 100% best friend. period. So some good came out of going to that school, even if it wasn't a perfect fit. And then I was done with high school and moved on. So it's been a long ride in school, and things didn't really get much better after that. I had a really bad falling out at home that led to me graduating high school basically sleeping on other people's couches. And I never went back to live at home. I left when I was 17 for a good reason and haven't been back since. I've talked to my family, and for a while we had an even closer relationship, but it just didn't work out, I guess. Which is never what you want to hear with your family, but again, this is all sort of working towards my ultimate point, so don't take any of this too intensely yet. But after that happened, I had limited options for my year right out of high school, and I ended up just transitioning to being a full-time employee at the job that I had been working, which was as a server in an old folks home, which, by the way, is a really fun, tiring but fun gig if you're looking for a job. Working in the dining room of a senior living community gave me some of the best memories for working that I've ever had, and I actually enjoyed it so much that I did it for 7 years across 3 different places. So it's something to look into if you're on the hunt. But anyhow, that year right after high school, I found another group of friends, but they were not good kids. They reminded me of the kids who I knew back up in Connecticut when I was like 12 and 13, but it was a whole nother level of stakes because these kids were doing drugs and partying, and they were into metal like I was, and they were, a family for me for a while when I felt like I had no real family. But they were not good people, as I found out. And that was a hard lesson to learn as well. Point being, the reason why I've just shared this long social history is to say that I have had an incredible up and down roller coaster with making friends. And I know that other people struggle with it too. So I just wanted to talk about it and tell you what I've learned. And one of the things that I think is most important is what I've recently come to terms with about emotions. So for me, as an empathetic person and also as an ASPE, I'm incredibly sensitive to other people's emotions and my own emotions, even if I don't always understand them immediately. I'm very literal and to the point, especially when I'm having a discussion with someone about an emotional topic. So something that might be an argument with someone. I'm the kind of person who likes to cut right to the chase and say, you did this and I did that, and where can we meet in the middle on this, or whatever. I personally don't have any trouble admitting what I've done wrong, or owning up to it, or recognizing that there's another side that I maybe didn't think of. And I think that that's really, really hard for some people, especially if they've never been to therapy, especially if they had a hard home life growing up, especially if they never had anyone to guide them through dealing with emotions and dealing with conflict and learning that it's okay to feel differently than somebody else. It doesn't threaten your thought or your existence to have someone disagree with you. It just means that they disagree with you, and you don't have to get so upset about it, because it's probably not going to make a difference whether or not they agree with you. That's in general. However, when you are dealing with these more personal relationships, like with your family or with friends that you've made or are trying to make or are maintaining a relationship with, everyone has a different flow and coping habits and capability even to offer love or attention or whatever thing it is you were hoping to get from that person that you didn't, or hoping to resolve with that person that you didn't. Some people are just not capable of handling those things, and that's not necessarily even their fault. But I do think that it is all of our responsibility to learn how to deal with those things, to accept that we're not perfect and that there's no reason for us to be masters at conversing or masters at solving arguments or masters at mediating if we don't have the education on it. I think it's very similar to doing anything else. You don't expect everyone to know how to make a stained glass window. They had to learn from someone else as well. And I don't think it's any different for us with emotions. I think that we need to learn how to communicate in a variety of different situations. We're just not programmed for everything that could possibly happen between the time that we're born and the time that we die. There's a lot that we know instinctively, but when it comes to dealing with other people, there's a lot to learn, because we are so vastly different in our mentalities across the board. And everyone wants to be included, but people are willing to exclude and include people at very high and harmful costs, just because they don't really know how to navigate those situations better. So in my experience, I have found that there are sort of 3 types of people when it comes to dealing with emotional topics. You have one sort of people would be the kind who are ignoring, it seems like, of all of the emotional stuff. And maybe it's intentional, maybe it's not. It doesn't matter. The point is that when things get hard for them, they either try to laugh it off, pretend it never happened, or some other really frustrating form of sweeping it under the rug, which is great when you get 2 people like that together. They can bond really easily because they're never willing to forge a deep enough connection to talk about what they dislike about each other or what needs to be evened out for that relationship to progress. So it's a dangerous thing, though, to do that, even though it's easy to live your life like that and to just ignore the things that you feel like are too overwhelming for you to process. I understand why so many people resort to that, because it is infinitely easier. But it's also detracting from who you could be as a person, because you're never letting yourself feel any of those things, and you're going to just bottle up all this frustration and anger until you're not really anyone. You're just a negative person letting other people talk the way they want to you, treat you the way they want, maybe step over your own preferences. And then I find that often these are the same people who really enjoy gossip and drama. So if you know someone who's very gossipy and likes to talk crap about people, as soon as they leave, or as soon as they can think of anything to say, and it's not warranted in any way, they're not trying to like make you feel better, like, oh, he's really ugly, to try to cheer you up kind of thing. These are the people who, without any provocation, will come to you and say, oh, did you hear so and so, or did you know this, or oh my god, that's so ugly, or whatever. Those are the people I'm talking about. And it's just unfortunate, but people who are not like that will never really belong with or fit in with the people who are like that. So if you are not like that, you have the decision when you meet people like that. How far are you willing to go? Because unless they learn to be different, which you cannot expect to change them by yourself. So unless they either get professional help or have some sort of awakening that allows them to understand your perspective or what it is to be different than that, the odds of them changing are very slim to none. And so, for example, my family, all of the members, there are 6 of us in my immediate family, 5 of them are people like that. And I love them, even though I don't even talk to them. I do care about them as people, but their inability to accept fault and blame and the fact that life just is messy and hard, and sometimes you have to account for other people's feelings, they're never, unless something great happens for them, they're not going to change. So it's my decision to either deal with them or not deal with them. I either accept them the way that they are because I'm capable of doing that where they are not, or I say, you guys are causing me more pain than it's worth, so we're not gonna deal with each other. That is your option, and you're right, and sometimes it's a necessity. If someone is hurting you because of their own emotional stunted problems, you have every right and are encouraged to walk away from that situation, no matter how hard it is, no matter if they're supposed to be someone to you or not. You don't deserve to have to deal with that, and you're never going to change that alone. Such as something to consider. I find that all of the groups, the kids at the private school in high school, the kids at the public school in middle school, any group I've ever met that was really catty and exclusive like that, 100% of those group members are these people who just sweep everything under the rug and never mature emotionally. Just don't think that that is something that's wrong with you. And this is where I'm at right now. I'm having a really hard time lately not feeling like it's my fault and like I'm a bad person and like something's wrong with me just because I'm different from them. And because they're not able to be as accepting or caring as I would like for them to be. My family particularly, but also, just other people who I've met throughout my life who have made me feel either rejected or just like they didn't care enough to work out any issues that might have cropped up that didn't have to be a big deal. Some people just cannot handle you telling them the reality of the situation if it's not what they want to believe. So anyhow, most of the times those people are those people, and they flock and hang out together, and they're this sphere of negativity because that's the only way they know how to be, and they don't grow out of it usually. The second type of people, I think, are more like those who I met in both of my punk rock metal groups that I found, both in Connecticut and in the South. The kids were vastly different, but the reason why I was attracted to them was because they acknowledged emotions. Everyone else I had known would rather either hurt you or ignore you. And these kids accepted the fact that hurting and miscommunication and a slew of other depressing feelings that we have in this life exist. And that doesn't mean that we're all damned or that life sucks or anything. It's just, it's okay to acknowledge when someone shouldn't have said something to you or when you should have done something for someone. So I really appreciated the fact that these kids were at least not acting like those things didn't exist, because that made me feel crazy, if I was the only person in the world who had feelings about things and reactions to things. I was very confused by that. But alternate to those people who ignore it all, I found those kids who are usually outcasts and rejects and different alternative kids. They now were this new group of people who were saying, yeah, we listen to this music and we feel bad and we talk about it and whatever. But again, it still didn't work out in the long run, because acknowledging emotions is not enough. It's like the middle step. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the people in that step. It's just that there's another step, which is not just acknowledging those emotions, but being able to process them and do something productive and positive with them. Knowing that something went wrong, and then knowing that you have to do something about it, and being able to present your opinion to someone else without offending or just being rude to them outright or putting them on guard. Being able to have a discussion about a difficult topic rather than a fight. That is a huge, huge part of emotional maturity. And I just think if you've been struggling socially, consider that. What group do you belong to? And are you hanging around people in the same group or a different group? Because it doesn't really matter where you are. I'm not gonna condemn all the people who want to live a surface level life emotionally. If that's what works for them, then that's fine. But everyone else can't force them to change, and they shouldn't insist that we aren't allowed to have feelings. Feelings aren't hurtful or damaging if you know how to handle them. So I don't know if any of this actually made any sense or had a linear thought pattern, but I just wanted to, I guess, just talk about this fact that just because you're born into a family doesn't mean you know or will always know how to interact with them even. And just because you make a friend doesn't mean that you can maintain that friendship without putting any effort into it. The best relationships we have are high maintenance ones, not because those people are irritating us or anything, but because it's your job as someone's close friend or confidant or someone that you love, a relationship, anything like that. It's your job to be an active member of that relationship. And that means also tending to the other person's thoughts and feelings, not just your own. So if you meet people who are not on the same page as you, number one, don't try to make them catch up to you, because you're going to be wasting your time. And number two, I guess just don't feel like it's you. Just because you get a mismatch with people doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. I think it's a lot more rare to be in group 3 than it is to be in group 1. Not that everyone doesn't have something to offer no matter what, but I'm just saying it might be easier for you to build healthier, stronger, more sane relationships, ones that aren't going to be toxic or upsetting to you, if you are trying to connect with people on a similar emotional maturity level as you. There's maturity in general, but then there's emotional maturity, which I think has a completely different context and has a lot more to do with your happiness in your interpersonal relationships throughout your life. So, I personally have been dealing a lot lately with my familial relationships not going the way that I anticipated. I am I'm very outspoken about things with my family, but I also have a really fierce sense of loyalty and protection towards them. And they have sort of taken that for granted, in my opinion, but I think it's also just because they don't feel that way. They're just not programmed to have that sort of bond that I feel like I wish I had with them. So I can't fault them for that, but it's still difficult as you're getting older to hit these points where you feel like you don't get along with people who you thought you were supposed to get along with, or you thought the relationship was going to be, a certain way, and it's completely different, or that person's not giving you the love or the attention that you feel like you deserve, or like is equal to what you're doing for them. Especially, that's a huge one. I put a lot of work into my relationships with my different family members, and if I didn't contact, like, say, my brothers, if I don't talk to my brothers in however long, I'm not going to hear from them. It's not like they're doing it to hurt me, but they don't think of me like that, like I do for them. Like, when something good happens to me, the first people I would want to call would be my brothers and my mom. But now it's like none of them are on my call list, because I've just realized that they're not that kind of people. And me trying to pretend that they were, or trying to include them as if that was their personality, only made things worse. Made it more hurtful, and probably ended up being a lot of pain for me and not as much for them, because they're those people who don't want to deal with it and don't want to look at it, and that's fine for them. But again, just see this as your situation, whatever that may be. Are you trying to force something with people who just don't equate, and is there a way for you guys to equate or not? So anyway, I hope that this was somewhat helpful. I guess my overall point would be mainly what I just said, but also to not be so hard on yourself if you're different than the people around you. Even if they're supposed to be the closest people in the world to you, you're still an individual with your own mind and your own thoughts and your own experience. as long as you're being honest with yourself, then you really shouldn't ever feel bad about anything. Just own up to what you do wrong. Don't just accuse other people, but be there, be an active member. If you feel like you can work on your interpersonal skills and you don't want to go see a therapist, that's fine. You don't have to. There are a million books and things online at the library, hundreds of resources for you to learn how to deal with these things better. I really like the dialectical behavior therapy guides. A lot of them deal with controlling your own emotions, sort of just finding your own like zen, I guess, and being okay with yourself, and also having the skills to discuss emotional things with other people, both to reach your desired outcome and also to make sure that you're being passive enough that you're not putting anyone on the defensive, which is a great way to shut people down very quickly. And sometimes you might not even know that you're doing it. And that's the thing, is that without some guidance about the way that we speak to each other and the things that we say and how we even feel, sometimes it's hard to even know ourselves why we're so mad, or why we're upset, or why we're crying even. You don't always know the exact cause of your emotions, but it helps to be able to identify them. And I think that these different forms of therapy and just learning to communicate better shouldn't be looked at as embarrassing, or I think they should be looked at more as a social responsibility and obligation to your fellow members of the world, or your world even, because this is how we get better, and this is how we stop hurting each other and making mistakes. It's so much more difficult to trial and error and lose all those people who meant something to you. So I'll just consider it if you never have before. If you are working on something like that right now, I am very proud of you, and I encourage you to continue it even when it's hard. I know that at first I had a lot of trouble changing my dialogue and my emotional output, and especially not reacting to things that people said to me that would upset me, and make me feel really bad in some way or another. Learning how to not react that way was really important to me, because I got sick of crying and hiding and feeling worthless as a person. And it makes it a lot easier to handle negative comments when you know that you're not going to react like anyone other than who you want to be. And these things help you get to that place. So it's not perfect right away, and I was saying I can remember multiple times where I reverted to my old habits of arguing and crying and just showing weakness and not having a constructive conversation due to my own crumbling. And I have over time become much better at asserting myself respectfully. So anyway, if there's anything that you want to talk about concerning this, or any thoughts, or if there's any resources that you like that you want to share with the world, please feel free to comment below, or if you have a more private message, you can feel free to email me if you want. It's just eloASMR@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to talk with you as much as I can. These things interest me, so you're not going to bother me. Anyway, thank you all for those of you who listened. Again, I know that everyone has a different video style that they like, and not everything's for everyone, but I hope that at least for those of you who might be interested in this video, that it wasn't a waste. And I really just appreciate all of you and all of the support I've been getting lately. My birthday is actually coming up on Monday the 27th, and I'm hoping that I might be getting a new camera for my boyfriend for my birthday. He said some things that made me think I might be. So hopefully we'll have crystal clear picture next time, and maybe even better sound if I can move out of this room to a quieter room to film. So good things on the horizon, I hope, and I hope that you guys are all doing well, and that you have sweet dreams or a restful, relaxing day, and just try to keep yourself as calm as you can and just do your best. And I will see you next time.